Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. Now we are almost ready for my top 50 list and my honorable mentions, but I have one last thing to take care of before we do that. This year I've decided to put out a top 10 worst albums of the year. I usually don't do that for a couple of different reasons. Usually I don't listen to a lot of bad music in my opinion. I always find some merits of it to push it out of the realm of bad. More, they're usually disappointing. 2018, I didn't really have a lot of bad or disappointing albums. There's a few that I could name off the top of my head, like the Fall Out Boy album, the Panic at the Disco album, the Machine Head album, but there were still some songs on there that I enjoyed. It just wouldn't go back to any of those albums. But this time around, even with as good as this year has been, I did find 10 that I could put on here and say that I was either disappointed by them, I was angered by them, or I just did not enjoy them at all. Even still, you're gonna find out with these that they're not like absolutely terrible. There's nothing there that can be salvaged. I think there's some interesting ideas or there's some good songs for some of these. I do have 5 honorable mentions, but ones that just missed the cut before those honorable mentions. The Kanye West album definitely did not live up to expectations, but to be fair, since my Dark, Beautiful, Twisted Fantasy, I really haven't enjoyed a Kanye West album other than Life of Pablo in bits and pieces. I wasn't really expecting much, and there are some salvageable songs on there, and it being short, it's not really worth my time to say that it was a horrible album. Another one that just missed the cut as well is the Head and the Heart album, just not really memorable to me, and because of that, I didn't really think it would be mentioned in this group. Honestly, I don't really remember much of it, and I'm pretty sure that most people don't either. So those two missed my cut, but here are my 5 actual honorable mentions. The 5 honorable mentions I got are X-Ambassadors with Orion, Of Mice and Men with Earth and Sky, Sturgill Simpson with Sound and Fury, Sun O with Life Metal and Pyroclast, and Sting with My Songs. Each of them are on here for different reasons, and there might be some on here that you are surprised or maybe angered about, but let me go over them real quick. Sting, My Songs, I've done a review on. The thing that frustrated me is just the fact that it is called an album. It should be like a compilation album. There are some interesting reworkings of his popular songs, but most of them aren't really that different. It just feels kind of cheap to call it an album, or a studio album, if you will. Still, a lot of these songs are great, and I can't hate all these songs. I love Sting. It was just a little bit of a blow to me because if you want to find one that he does some reworkings on that is even more interesting, go with Symphonicities, which takes some Sting and Police songs and reimagines it with an orchestra. Sun O, Life Metal and Pyroclast, this is just not for me. I know I shouldn't necessarily put something that's not for me on a worst list, but the problem that I have with it is just how much praise it's getting and how much it angered me listening to this. Each of these albums are about 45 minutes to an hour long and it's 4 songs. I understand it is drone metal and maybe I just don't get it, but even with some interesting ideas, each of these songs being about 10 plus minutes long and you're not really having anything happen other than a drone. It might be the best drone music that I've listened to, but it just was really frustrating, and each time I listened to it, I was just really angry because I just did not understand why there was such a fuss about it. To me, it just feels like a lot of randomness rather than very intricate ideas. I know I'm going to be wrong about this. Luckily, it wasn't my top 10. As I listened to it more, I started liking it a little bit more, but still it really does frustrate me that these albums got so much praise when in all honesty I don't see the appeal. Sturgill Simpson, Sound and Fury, a lot of interesting ideas, but this one disappointed me because as much as there were some decent songs, production on it is absolute crap, and it just takes away from enjoying a lot of these songs. His vocals are just all over the place. Whenever there is momentum with this, there's also songs that just take away that momentum, like Make Art Not Friends. It does disappoint me because I love The Sailor's Guide to Earth. It definitely did deserve a spot as one of the albums of the year for the Grammys back when it came out. It's interesting that I've heard people talk about how bad the production on the new Baroness album was and don't necessarily talk about this one. There are enough songs on here to not hit my top 10. And then for both Of Mice and Men and X-Ambassadors, these are two that I honestly thought were going to be in my top 10, but once I listened to them again, it does still have some problems, but it's not as unenjoyable as it once was. Of Mice and Men did a better job than their previous album, but I would love for them to take some time away to make some more interesting metalcore. And Ex Ambassadors, there are some catchy songs on there. Boom is a stupid song, but it's really catchy. And Hey Child is really nice too. Again, it's a lot of paint by numbers, pop rock, but there are some decent songs on there, and that's why I can't put in my top 10. So let's get going with the actual top 10 though. So number 10, we have Weezer with both the Teal and Black albums. There are some decent songs on the Black album. Too Many Thoughts in My Head is solid, and I do like at least some of the singles. High as a Kite ain't bad. Why I put it here is because instead of having a really good album, to have Weezer come back to a return of form, it just feels like they tried two totally different ideas and both of them came out as mediocre. The covers, not bad, just mediocre. The Black album, not bad, just mediocre. I just wish that they had took that effort to make a phenomenal album, especially with the last few albums that they've had. This doesn't make me feel much better about new music coming out for them, especially with a new album coming out in 2020. They might need to take some time away, regroup, and come out with something a little bit better. Number 9, we have Beck with Hyperspace. This one is very pandering until the end of the album, and it's disappointing to me because there are some interesting ideas. Uneventful Days has some good production to it. I like the vibe of it. Wait on You isn't bad. Chemical is the most frustrating song on the album because it's a beautiful arrangement, but it just feels so pandering with the trap beats and Beck trying to rap on it. Hyperlife and Hyperspace are very annoying. It's not until you get to the last 4 songs of the album where it feels a little bit like his album from 2015 that it starts to feel like a solid album. The Everlasting Nothing is a great song to end the album where it finally combines both his style and the more current ideas into something really solid. I just wish that the beginning of the album was just as good. If you've been someone who has said that Beck is a trend chaser, this isn't going to change your mind on it. If anything, it kind of solidifies that idea. And also Pharrell, I'm sorry, but he did not have a good year, and this is one particular instance where it definitely shows that 2019 was not his year. Number 8, Collective Soul with Blood. Another one that I have reviewed. I enjoy parts of it, but if I'm gonna be honest, it's a pretty bland rock album. Why it's not higher is because I wasn't really expecting much from them. Collective Soul has been around for a while, so they have the cachet to do whatever they want. And, there's some decent ideas, but nothing that really strays away from the formulaic rock ideas that they've done before. So, unfortunately, it makes my list. Number 7, Scott Stapp with The Space Between the Shadows. Another one where I didn't have much expectations with it, though I had a little bit more because I thought his work with Art of Anarchy wasn't horrible. I was hoping that this time around, even without Tremonti, even without the people from Alter Bridge, that he could put out something that was at least better than decent. And unfortunately, he fell short of it. It feels like a dime a dozen alt-rock album with a lot of Christian undertones. Not a bad thing, but it's not my style. And he doesn't really sound great on this album either. That's why it found a spot on my top 10 worst albums. Number 6, we got Chance the Rapper with The Big Day. One that isn't horrible. It's not the worst album of the decade. It's not the worst album of the year, in my opinion. I think there are some saving graces on this album, especially 5-Year Plan and Some Come Down. But the problem with this album is, taking away the 3 skits, this album is too long and bloated. It's about 70 minutes, 19 tracks, and not a lot of them stand out as really interesting. There's a span in the middle where it just all kind of falls apart, and there's just not enough momentum to make this interesting. And again, the reason why it's also on my list is because it's disappointing. I was really hoping that with his first album, he would be able to put out something really, really solid. I really liked Acid Rap. I liked The Coloring Book. So to see his first actual studio album go this way, it's unfortunate. But did not make my top 5 because I think that there are 5 worse albums. We start off with number 5 of Kim Gordon and No Home Record. So these next 2, if I was to place it, I would say that those are the worst sounding albums and some of the worst music that I have listened to. But the reason why it's only 4 and 5 is because I didn't have much expectations with these. These are ones that just came out of nowhere, and the 3 other ones above it kind of had more expectations and had a lot to be desired. Kim Gordon, one of the people from Sonic Youth, comes out with her first solo album, and it just is a complete mess to me. A lot of ramblings, a lot of really weird ideas. I understand that it's kind of like this art experimental rock ideas, but it just feels like there's a lot of ramblings going on, and I really don't understand the appeal of this. And it surprises me that it made the consensus top 50 list for album of the year. I don't understand the appeal. Number 4, we have Iggy Pop with Free. Again, another one that I didn't have much expectations for, but I had a little bit more because I did like post-pop depression. There's been other albums from Iggy Pop from the decade that I also did not enjoy, and unfortunately this one is also there. It starts off decently. There are some interesting ideas, but once you get to James Bond and Dirty Sanchez, you get to really annoying and kind of weird and out of taste songs. And then you get the last part of the album where he goes into spoken word, and it just feels like a mess. And I hope that this isn't the last album that we see from him, because I would love to see him go off on a high note. This definitely was not one. The last 3 albums, though, are here because of the use of pandering and of certain styles that I just don't find interesting in music. And unfortunately, this is becoming more and more of a case through a lot of not as popular genres, so that way they become more popular to the masses. Number 3, we had Zac Brown Band with The Owl. This is one I wasn't even going to listen to, but I was like, you know what, let's listen to the stuff that I missed. And holy shit, this one panders so much. It starts off with taking a lot of mainstream ideas and throwing it into country. And I mean, they've had some diverse albums before, but this one seems so pandering, and it's really frustrating. There's some songs that takes them back to what they are known for, what they're good at, but it just feels like it's too little too late by the time you get into the middle and the end of the album. Also, Shoe Fly Pie kind of feels like they're taking that idea of chicken fried and just like, okay, we're gonna do another food song just to keep people who love us interested. It's unfortunate because I'm not a huge Zac Brown Band fan, but in terms of their style, I've enjoyed some of their stuff. Now it just feels like they're trying to change their style and go to an audience that may or may not really embrace them. In terms of these 3, this was the ones I had the least expectations for. Number 2, we have Bad Wolves with Nation. I reviewed this not too long ago. These last 2 spots, I had an argument of which way I want to lean, because either of these 2 could easily have made the number 1 spot. And Bad Wolves was the number 1 spot for a while. The biggest reason was because they had put out an album literally in 2018 that was really solid. It did have a little bit of that Five Finger Death Punch flair. There were some parts that made it seem like it was going to be dime a dozen, but there was a lot of songs on there that had a lot of really interesting aggression, had a lot of great vocals, had a lot of solid arranging, and kind of went out of the box when it came to chord progressions. That made it stand out, made it into my top 50 of that year. But I did see parts of it that could have made them regress to the Five Finger Death Punch sound, and unfortunately that's what happened. Because they are directed by one of the members of Five Finger Death Punch, of course we finally got to the point where they sound like Five Finger Death Punch, and now they sound dime a dozen. Even the songs that have that aggression, have the rapping, have a lot of really interesting social undertones talking about what's going on in America and the prison system and societal and structural racism, it feels like it is dialed back. It feels more pop. It feels more pop metal. It just doesn't have the bite that the other album did. Having a song like Sober, it's a nice sentiment, but it feels so outside of them. It's unfortunate to hear that, because I would have loved to see Bad Wolves in concert. They're going to be playing with Disturbed, but now it's like, I don't want to go see Disturbed if Bad Wolves are going to be there. They became what I was fearing the most. They became something that is not going to stand out in the field, but unfortunately it might, because of the more radio-friendly alt-metal ideas. It might become more popular, and because of that they might stay the same way. I hope they don't, and the only reason why it's number 2 is because when I think about it, there's a chance that they can still go back to the sound on their first album. They've only had 2 albums. Maybe this is just a fluke, So I'm holding out hope. Number one, though, was so frustrating to me because of how much I've enjoyed their albums over the years. Yes, they are a band who may have a certain sound that is kind of generic in the hard rock scene, but I've enjoyed a lot of what they have done. But unfortunately, they went too far into the mainstream, and it definitely shows just how bad this album is. And that album is Papa Roach with Who Do You Trust? I've enjoyed The Connection, I've enjoyed Crooked Teeth, I've enjoyed Face Everything and Rise. Those albums really stand out to me in the 2010s. They're not like the best albums of all time, but they were very solid. They were able to accentuate what they do best. This album so panders. It takes the ideas that Imagine Dragons have made popular over the last couple of albums and mixes with their style. And like, yes, it kind of works because their style was kind of mainstream in general, but it just overdoes it. And then the problem is that all the other songs that feel like them feel like too over the top in their aggression, or kind of like now dad rock. The song Who Do You Trust? It feels as if a dad wrote a song about rebellion and about fighting back against the government and tried to cater it to the younger generations and try to do it in such a cool way. Even the music video feels really cheesy, and I get it, it's their style at times, but this album was so disappointing because it raised my greatest fear, and my greatest fear was this band eventually becoming a Imagine Dragons clone. The Connection, you know, had some of that electronic idea, but it worked well to their advantage. It's unfortunate because I really like Papa Roach. It's one of my guilty pleasure bands, and to see them take that Imagine Dragons approach, I really fear what the next couple of albums could be. So that's my top 10 worst albums of 2019. Let me know what you love or hate about the list. Let me know about your top 10 worst albums of 2019. Share this with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to my channel. That way I know that you enjoy what I'm doing and want to see this channel become bigger and better for the future. So no more stalling. Tomorrow we are going to be starting up the top 50 albums of 2019, but we gotta first do my honorable mentions list. But until then, this is The Music Fan, and I'm signing off.